Hi, I'm Rashonda. I'm the creator of this YouTube channel as well as the artbyro.com website where you can find over 200 art and drawing tutorials. In today's video, I'm going to be drawing a nutcracker just in time for the holiday season, so I hope you'll feel inspired to draw along and try your own. After all, that's what this channel is all about. My hope when I create these videos is that someone will feel inspired and motivated to do some of their own artwork. So let's go ahead and go on over to the art studio and get started on today's drawing tutorial. Hello and welcome to the Art by Ro studio. Today I'm going to be showing you how I draw a nutcracker. You know, the little wooden guys that come out for the holidays. I don't know, in my family, they never actually got used to crack nuts. I don't know if they even are functional or not, but they're kind of cool and they're very nostalgic, remind me of my childhood. So I had a lot of fun drawing the last few that I did, and I thought I'd make a video about it. So I am doing mine on an artist trading card. You can use whatever kind of paper you want. This is cardstock, which I find works really nicely with markers. It's smooth, it's a little heavier. It's cut down into an artist trading card size, which is nice because I can keep them in a portfolio, make a nice little gallery of my drawings that I did. So if I want, I can trade them or I can go back and I can look at them later. And this is a really great time saver. And I make my own blank artist trading cards. And I can get 10 of them out of one sheet of paper, which is really nice. And like I said, I make them out of cardstock. So I can take one sheet of cardstock, cut it down into 10 pieces. If you cut it the right way, you can optimize and get 10 out of them. And then I just take a little corner punch and I round out the corners. And I have a container filled with these blank cards that I can just pull one out, draw on it real quick. It's really changed how I do my artwork and how much more efficient I am with my time that I have. My time's very limited. So I was looking for something that would allow me to make more art in less amount of time. This was a solution for that. So if you're not familiar with artist trading cards, what they are, how to make them, there's a free download in the description box. Go ahead and check that out. And let's go ahead and get started. So like with anything, I like to start out with some basic shapes, some basic guidelines. So I want to start with the head and the body of the nutcracker. So I'm going to draw some shapes here, some guidelines. This makes it really easy. And then also it kind of gets you over that fear of having that blank paper sitting in front of you and you're afraid to start making marks on it, and what if they're wrong? These don't have to be right. So when you're making your guides, you're not doing anything really specific. This is going to be his head. This is going to be his body. Some lines here, a line down the middle for symmetry so we can make it even on both sides. He's going to have like a little top hat, so I can rough that in. And again, just some basic shapes. I think I'm going to have the hat kind of angle out, so I can go ahead and draw that now, or you can draw it straight and do the angles later. Also, of course, you don't have to angle your hat if you don't want to. So I'm showing you one way to do this. My goal for you is just to get you encouraged to make some artwork and to get started, not necessarily to copy my drawings exactly. I want you to, at some point anyway, do your own thing and come up with your own creative ideas for the drawings and just use these as a starting point. So here's his arms. And keep in mind, these are typically, they're wooden. So they don't have a ton of real good detail on them. They're kind of clunky and funky looking, which I think is what makes them pretty cool. So we want to kind of capture that. But again, feel free to do yours however you want. So I like to draw the nose in here first because that's the center point of everything. And then we can come down here and draw the mouth. So the mouth on the ones that I've seen are typically kind of split between the body and where the head come together. So draw a square for the mouth, because they're usually just a cutout square. And then the eyes. So for the eyes, we're going to keep them fairly simple. And you want to keep them as symmetrical as possible. So I like to say, do the best you can. If something is supposed to be even and symmetrical, don't stress out to the point that you don't enjoy making your drawings, because that's definitely not what we're going through. That's not what we're trying to accomplish. So you need to be able to enjoy what you're doing, but you also want to have a little bit of standards for yourself, because you do want your drawings to turn out nice, and you want them to look like what it is you're trying to get them to look like. So you do need to have some standards, but you also don't want to stress yourself out so much that it takes all the fun away or you give up. So now I'm going to make some teeth. And we don't want this too creepy looking, so we can round them off a little bit. Round those off, and then when we go back in with the pen, we can fix those up. And then we can start refining this a little bit. So things like rounding off the head. And the head and the body are typically two separate pieces. So you can go ahead and leave that line in there, or you can erase it if you don't like how that looks. We can add some eyebrows up here. These are going to be partially covered up by this part of the hat there, which that's fine. And then I also want to have a mustache on mine. So I'm going to draw that in. And again, try to keep it symmetrical if you can. Kind of a little bit of like a teardrop type shape. And then just keep kind of tweaking things a little bit. I want this to come out a little bit further and angle down. Same thing over here. I want this to come out and angle down a little bit, just to make it a little more interesting. Not quite so blocky looking. And now we can start adding in the last little details for the sketch portion. And I'm going to put some hair on him. Again, nothing super fancy. Keeping everything pretty simple. Here's the center of my hat. I'm going to make some decorations on his hat. Put a little button up here. Maybe make a band down here. And again, you can do this however you want. A lot of different ways of making these. And then we'll put a beard that's going to go like this. And again, make the beard more detailed, less detailed, however you want to do it. And if you want, you can erase. These little click erasers are really nice. And I'll put links to my art supplies that I prefer to use. I'll put some links in the description box along with that artist trading card freebie. If you think you might be interested in learning more about artist trading cards, check that out. That free guide does have the template of how to cut out your cards so that you can get 10 of them out of one sheet of paper with minimal amount of waste from it, which is really nice. Now I can put some decorations on his chest. I could put some decorations on his arms. So I think I'll put some, because they're usually dressed up like soldiers. So they have all their little embellishments that they would have. I'm going to put a couple bands around his arm here. Do the same on both sides. And then if you want, you could put a couple here. And you can Google images of real nutcrackers to get some ideas of how you might want to decorate them. And then what I like to do is make a series of drawings, which is another reason why I love doing the artist trading cards. You can do a series and try something different every time. You can try different colors, different decorations for them. Try experimenting a little bit. So his arms are just going to run off the edge of the paper there, which is fine. If you want, you can bring them straight down here, or you can just kind of leave them as is and not fill this area in. So that's pretty much it for the drawing part of it. I don't think there's anything left to add there. So the next thing we want to do is do the outline. For the outlines, I like using a black Sharpie pen. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. You could use a brush pen, which is really cool, but those do take a little bit of practice to get good at getting your lines the way you want them, which is fine. Nothing wrong with needing to build up your skills. You can use the pen. I like the Sharpie pens. It's just what I've always used. You can try some other types of pens. You could try using markers for your outlines if your drawing's big enough. I don't like how markers outline. They tend to leave a fuzzy edge, which I don't like. And these leave a nice crisp edge, so I prefer using the Sharpie pen. We can leave that line right in there because the mouth needs to be able to open. We're just going to round the teeth off a little bit so it doesn't look as much like he's snarling. We don't want it to be too creepy, or maybe you do. That would be another take on it. Maybe you want to do some kind of creepy nutcracker, which would be cool. I'm all about the creepy, so that might be a cool idea. I'm not going to do that today, but could be interesting. See if you could make it a more, some kind of a possessed type of a nutcracker. We're just going to go over top of all of these, all the lines we want to keep. And this is a medium point pen. There are also fine point. I think there might even be like an ultra fine point. So it's up to you what type of line weight you want. You can vary the line weight. You can keep it consistent. Typically it looks better if you vary it a little bit. You could do a nice heavy outline. Typically in my drawings I like a heavier outline, at least on the outside edges. But that's another thing you can play around with and experiment and try something different, is to experiment with how you do your outlines. That could be fun. So this I'm going to fill in black down there. And then I'm literally just going over top of all the pencil lines I want to keep. Typically what I'll do is I will trace over top of everything and then clean up the pencil, erase the pencil lines, and then go back over and thicken up any lines that I think I want thicker. Play around with the line weight a little bit. But again, this is just one way of drawing this. There's a lot of different ways to draw things. And most of the decisions you make with your artwork are just a matter of personal preference. There's not always a right and wrong way to do things. So don't be afraid to play around with your drawings and try things and experiment. That's what makes it fun. But it's not a lot of fun if you're always afraid you're gonna mess something up. So now I can erase this, but I'm gonna go ahead and show you what I mean about making the outlines thicker. So one way is to make the outside edge thicker than the inside edge. And that's done just by going right along the edge of the outline and adding another pass of the pen. Now you could also try finding different size pens. I know there are some different sets that you can get that have all different types of nibs on them. But I actually find this to be very relaxing, so I don't mind doing it. This is one of my favorite parts of working on drawings, is doing the outline and just keep going back over it until it looks the way that I like it and the way I want it to look. So that's what it looks like if you add a little bit thicker outline. And then you can play around with some of the inside lines and the thickness there if you want. You could add some shadows in here. You could add some hatching or cross hatching, and you could do that with, so here's a Sharpie pen. This is a fine point. This is the medium point. You can make it kind of a, give it that little bit of like a comic book type of a feel to it. And just add some hatching and cross hatching to it. Just to kind of break up these areas here, add a little bit of shading, adds a little bit of texture to the drawing. And of course, if you want to balance it out, then you can do the same thing on the other side. You could do some of these embellishments. And it just gives a little bit different look. So again, this is one of those things, it's just a matter of personal preference. Maybe you like the way that looks, maybe you don't. But it's just another idea of how you can change your drawing up a little bit, make it look a little bit different. So now the next thing is to use the eraser and erase all these pencil lines and clean this up. So I like to just use a block eraser and then just go over top of the entire drawing and erase everything. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Grab me some markers and I'll be back. All right, I got the pencil lines all cleaned up and I picked out some color of markers that I want to use. And the way I do this, these little scrap papers are left over from cutting out my blank cards. And I just kind of check them out on here first, make sure they look okay. And then that way I know I'm good to go. And I have my colors all picked out ahead of time. So now I'm just going to start filling this in. So these are going to be red. And I like to work on small sections at a time to make sure the markers don't dry out. If you want to be able to blend your markers together, they need to be kind of wet as you're working. So I like to just work in smaller sections and then I don't have to worry about it. So what I typically do is I will take my lighter color and put that down first. So if I'm doing yellow, I'll have 2 or 3 different yellows. I'll put the lighter one down and then I will take the darker one and add in some areas where it's a little bit darker. And then I go back with the lighter one and go over those edges and smooth that out a little bit. So this is another one of those things where there's different ways to do this. I'm showing you one way. You can do it this way or find another one. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who have a different process or technique for using markers. Again, like I mentioned earlier, my goal is just to get you started. My goal is not to even encourage you to draw the same way that I do. My goal is simply to get you moving and doing stuff and trying things. And then hopefully from there, your confidence gets built up a little bit and you feel comfortable experimenting and trying your own ideas that you might have. And part of that is trying different techniques with your markers, trying different processes for doing things, just playing around, experimenting, having fun. That's the biggest thing, is just making sure you have fun with whatever artwork you're creating. So then usually what I do is I'll set my markers out in pairs so that I have everything ready. It's all right there. So now for the inside. And then one of the things with markers too is that to get the perfect marker that you want for whatever it is you're working on, that can be really difficult unless you have a pretty decent budget and you have a lot of different markers. So you might have to just kind of do the best you can with what you have. And sometimes that's going to mean kind of just accepting things for what they are and not being too discouraged by not having the exact colors that you want. So for example, this kind of fleshy color maybe isn't exactly what I wanted it to be, but I don't have the color that I'm picturing in my mind, or maybe the colors that you're looking at on a reference photo, or whatever it may be. You're not always going to be able to have the exact perfect colors that you need. Sometimes they're not going to blend as smoothly as you want. So you'll have to learn to just kind of accept things for how they are and have fun with what you're doing. And it comes back to what I talked about with the symmetry. If you're trying to keep your drawing symmetrical and you are just not able to do it for whatever reason, then don't give up, don't get discouraged and feel like you're just not good enough and you shouldn't be doing it and give up altogether. Let it be less than perfect. Everything doesn't have to be perfect. There's this misconception that in order to be an artist, everything has to be amazing and everything has to be perfect and there's no room for error. And that's just not realistic to think that you're never going to make mistakes. There's never going to be any issues. If you don't have a lot of markers to choose from, then you're going to be limited in how your colors are going to be able to blend. So maybe you decide you don't want your markers to blend at all and you want to use flat colors. That's going to give a very different look from if you're blending your markers. So these are things that you need to make sure you keep into consideration and accept so that you can continue and have fun and enjoy what you're doing without feeling discouraged. And that's one of the reasons that I felt motivated to put my lessons on the internet and to make videos, is because I hear so much from people that they love creating art. They always loved it as a kid, but as an adult they don't do it because they're not good enough. And it bothers me to hear that, because I don't know, who are you making it for? If you're making it for yourself, it doesn't matter if it's good enough. And who's to say what's good enough and what's not good enough? So if you're a hobby artist, which is what I consider myself, I'm not a professional artist. I don't want to be a professional artist. I'm not trying to sell my artwork. I create my art and I do these drawings because they're relaxing. I enjoy it. I have fun. And that's good enough. That's all that matters to me. If I do something, I try something new and it doesn't turn out exactly the way I want it to, one thing I keep in mind is that these things take practice, and that's okay. So if you do something for the first time and try something new and you're not great at it, that's okay. You know you can get better. It just takes practice, and art and drawing are the same. It's just a matter of practice. But one thing that gives me some peace of mind is that I know I'm doing this because it's relaxing and I enjoy it. And that's another reason why I love doing the artist trading cards, because I find them to be extremely relaxing and enjoyable. And I love that I can finish a drawing in less time. So typically something on an artist trading card, if it's not super detailed, and if I'm not making a video where I'm talking and doing other things and kind of multitasking a little bit, then I know I can make an artist trading card in about 30 minutes. So, and I just went right off the edge of that paper, not paying attention to what I'm doing. So if you have a colorless blender, you can also use it like an eraser and just sort of scrub that area where it's at, and it'll remove it. It won't remove it altogether, but it'll lighten it up enough that when you cover it up with whatever color is actually going in that spot, then you won't notice that there was another color there. But as I was saying, so if I'm working on something and I'm not recording a video and I'm not distracted and doing other things, then it'll take about 30 minutes start to finish, which is pretty good. I mean, most of us can find 30 minutes in a day, or maybe not even in a day, but in a week. So when I was super busy at my previous day job, we worked a lot of hours, and I didn't have a lot of time, and I had not been creating art for quite a while, and it was starting to bother me. So I made a commitment to do some drawings a little bit each day. And what I did was I committed to 5 minutes a day. And that's when I discovered that doing my work on artist trading cards really made a difference, because I could work on them a little bit each day. So normally what I would do is I could do the sketch in about 5 minutes or so. So one day I might do the sketch, the next day I might do the outlining, the next day I would do part of the color, and then finish it up on the following day. So I could normally, even when I didn't have much time, I could do at least one a week, which for me was very nice because I hadn't been doing any. So to go from nothing, and it had been about 6 years that I hadn't been creating any artwork at all, and it was starting to get to me a little bit. So I started doing them on the artist trading cards, and it was nice that I could actually get things finished in a reasonable amount of time, and I wasn't as stressed out about it. Now I'm choosing colors based off of images that I just did a quick Google search to see what colors to use to get some ideas. So you can pick and choose the colors you want. One thing I did notice with the Nutcrackers when I brought the images up is there's a lot of colors on one. They don't limit too much to the colors that are used on one individual Nutcracker. I kind of toned that down a little bit. I didn't want to use too many different colors. But again, that's personal preference. You should use as many or as few colors as what seems right, what you like. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep filling these in, get all these areas finished up, get the color added. And as you can see, I'm working in a little bit smaller sections so that I can get these colors blended in together. With the artist trading card, it's pretty easy to work while the markers are still wet, as long as you work in a little bit smaller sections. And again, if you're not familiar with the artist trading cards, check out the freebie that's in the description box. There's a link in there. I'll put a link in there for it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do a time lapse to get this finished, and then I will be back when I have that done. Alright, so all of the color is done. And the last thing I like to do with my drawings is to add white using one of these white Jelly Roll pens. This is optional. You could do this or leave it off. I like it because it just kind of breaks up some of these big areas of color. So I prefer to add a little bit of white in there. And I'm not following really any type of like light source or anything like that. I'm not worrying about things being realistic. This is not a realistic drawing, so I'm just going to throw some white in here kind of randomly. Like I said, just to break up these big areas of color. And you could do this or not. You could change the approach that you add the white if you want the white, but you don't like the way I do it. That's fine too. Just do whatever you think looks good. If you don't know, then that comes back to the experimenting and trying different things and not being too afraid of making mistakes and messing up and ruining your drawings. Which again, one of the nice things about the artist trading cards, because they are so much quicker than a full piece of paper, that you don't have to worry as much about making mistakes. You can experiment a little bit more and try different things. So that's it for this Nutcracker. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully you feel inspired to create some of your own artwork. And I will see you next time. Happy creating! Well, that's it for today's video. I hope you feel inspired to do some of your own artwork, and hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like. It helps us reach more people. And also, don't forget to subscribe if you want to get notified of future videos. And before you leave, check out that description box and grab that free download of the ATC Beginner Guide so you can get started making some of your own artist trading cards. I will see you in the next video. Bye!